The GovX show is supported by Forrester, helping government organisations perform at their best. Visit forrester.com to learn more.
Hi and welcome to another episode of the GovX Show. I'm Tim Coulthard, Marketing Director here at GovX Digital. And joining me today is Matt Stevens, who's the Public Sector Lead for Google Chrome Enterprise. We're partnering up with them for a key session for GovX Digital 2020. It's called Out of Office, Making a Success of Remote Working. And as you might expect, it's tackling the big challenge that most public sector organisations are wrestling with right now. How to let their staff work remotely and securely, whilst also offering flexible working solutions and allowing them to work safely in the office. Google Chrome Enterprise are helping organisations up and down the UK through cloud-based platforms, and Matt's going to explain a little bit about that, but also more widely the issues and challenges that the public sector are facing around security right now. It's a really big topic and it's a really pertinent one, so we're looking forward to hearing more from Matt. So here he is. So Matt, welcome to the GovX Show. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we're going to have a look at what your kind of key agenda is in terms of an organisation a bit later, and how you're going to be, what you're going to be talking about with us. But really, just keen to establish a bit more about you and your background. Maybe not the full CV, but I guess some of the kind of key staging posts along your career and where you've got to today, and the role that you've got with Chrome Enterprise.
Yeah, thanks. So I've kind of done all sorts. Really, it's a very potted history, but in a minute, I've had a few years living in Sydney, running a restaurant. I sold photocopiers back in the day, which was interesting. I've worked at, I guess, the journey into BlackBerry, if you will, into Google. Sorry, started with BlackBerry. So I worked on the mobile side of things there in the enterprise, looking after kind of direct and indirect, and then I moved from there into a startup and from there into Samsung. And when I was at Samsung, I was on the Android, or what I was on kind of the knock side of things there, and then moved over to Google doing Android Enterprise, and kind of working into the space from an enterprise perspective. And then probably for the last 3 years or so, 3.5 years, I've been doing Chrome Enterprise, and yeah, working across the European region. So we as a team, when I joined, there was only myself and one other sales guy, and we kind of covered Europe, if you will. And in the last 3 years or so, we've kind of grown the team, and there are now 3 of us just in the UK, and we've got coverage in Nordics, Benelux, DACH, as we would call it, the German-speaking region, and then France and sunny countries, as one of my peers likes to present it. Our remit essentially is to sell the dream, that is Chrome Enterprise as an alternative endpoint to kind of your traditional Windows, Mac, Linux, or thin client devices.
Great stuff. There's something kind of pleasingly circular about starting with sort of photocopier sales and now be selling sort of cloud-based solutions. It's like you've led the commercial world and the professional world along the way as the tech's emerged. I find that kind of nicely circular.
Yeah, it's been a very interesting kind of background. I mean, I remember when I was doing photocopiers back in 2005. People then were talking about the digital office, paperless office, and all that kind of thing. And I think only now are we really seeing the kind of advent of technology that supports that. And I know within my working day, I can't remember the last time I printed something for work. And kind of within our working environment, kind of I live and work on Chrome, and I live and work in that cloud that you kind of allude to. And I think most of our customers do, and some of them without realizing it. I think kind of Office 365 has been the big push to kind of that cloud or SaaS-based model, if you will, and it's us working into that environment with customers, I guess.
And in talking about sort of work environments, we've all had to adapt and change the way we work during the course of 2020 for obvious reasons. How's it been for you before we sort of get onto the broader subject? I mean, what's your setup? Are you sort of home based, and how's it been?
Yeah, I think that if you heard a bang, that would be one of the things that I've seen through 2020, which is my dog paying a lot more attention to me, as we are 100% home based now. I say 100%. I think there's across kind of, if we look at the UK from a Google perspective, we've got maybe 5 or 10% of people who are into the office on a rotational basis. They are people kind of core services, or people that need to access elements of bits and bobs that you can't do from home. But everyone else has essentially been given the direction of work from home, and we will be doing so until kind of July next year, they've said, which is, like you say, it's different, but it's the new normal, and it's something that we need to, I guess, grow into, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the way Google's handling it. Google's obviously a huge company with lots of moving parts. Maybe for people that don't know, how does Chrome Enterprise fit into that big picture? And I guess what's the key remit and areas that you're covering?
Yeah, so Google is huge, right? And Chrome Enterprise is very important to that wider Google business. And if you go back to kind of where we came from 20 years ago, our mantra is make the world's information universally available and instantly accessible. And I guess if you build on that, we've seen that kind of the prevalence of that mission statement, if you will, build from the search function, which is what most people know Google for, and that has kind of built into the consumer space, and then across education. And ultimately what we're trying to do is build upon that access of information, but also take that to the next stage, which is kind of make tools and services universally available and readily accessible. And we fundamentally believe there's a better way of working, and that's where Chrome fits in to the wider Google business. And if you boil it down to that, we do kind of fundamentally, I'm hugely biased, obviously, but we do fundamentally believe that there is a better way of working, and that Chrome can support that. And it plugs in nicely as an entry point into the other products within the kind of enterprise stack that is Google Cloud Platform and Google Workspace. And yeah, Chrome facilitates that from our stack of products, but also helps deliver against kind of our competitors' stack of products, if you will. Ultimately, I think more and more customers are looking at an agnostic means of delivery. They don't want to be tied to a particular vendor, whatever that might be, whether that's a platform, collaboration tools, or whatever it is. You're seeing kind of consumerization, if you will, almost kind of come into how organizations are looking at delivery of tools and services. I think if you look at mobility, where I used to work in that space, I don't think you would speak to a single business decision leader who has had one platform from a mobile perspective. They'll have iOS, Android, they'll have seen Palm, BlackBerry, whatever it might be, from that standpoint. So why should it be that they're looking at just one platform forevermore, from a device standpoint? And so that's where kind of Google sees Chrome and Chrome Enterprise. It's let's support a different way of working, a better way of working.
Absolutely. And I'd like to look a little bit at the public sector in particular, because obviously that's where our area of interest is, and you too. How do you sort of typically work with the public sector, whether that's central government, local government, other agencies? You know, who are you talking to, and how are you kind of helping them? We'll probably come on to the sort of the actual technical outcomes and the end results, but what are the conversations you're having with public sector leaders?
Yeah, so I think more and more it's talking to people who are looking at change and change obviously has different flavors, but fundamentally it's people, whether that's C-suites, a CIO, CTO, or heads of IT directors, people who are looking at driving efficiencies. Now that could be a commercial efficiency and driving the return on investment, or it could be reducing management overhead, or that type of thing. I mean, ultimately there are variances in terms of the discussion, but there's huge similarities. If I kind of boil it down to the kind of three pillars that we kind of see resonance with, it's kind of that TCO, security and ease of management. And so that allows us to go fairly broad in terms of kind of the type of people that we speak to, but functionally, whether it's someone in IT or operations or kind of people management, or if you look at community care workers in the NHS, or kind of IT management for a local borough, for example, the challenges are generally the same. They want to improve performance, improve time that they're productive, and reduce the overhead. And certainly as we're looking at that kind of the new way of working that is working from home, that it's really a case of let's try and do more with less, but also support that remote and disparate workforce without obviously compromising on kind of some of the key pillars that they want to look to implement and maintain from a security and management perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned sort of several groups, and I suppose what's become more prevalent in recent years is that technology isn't the sole domain of a CTO or a CIO or head of IT, whatever it might be, and that actually, you know, as we know, it's an enabler, and therefore everybody has a stake in the sort of technology functions and outcomes and so on.
Yeah.
And those formerly quite siloed activities are now kind of cross-organizational and very, very sort of powerful in allowing changing behaviors, changing patterns, changing service delivery, whatever it might be. What in 2020, and maybe before, because the world won't always be like this, one would hope, what are the sort of common pain points and challenges that you're hearing from conversations within the public sector? What are the kind of big ones that you hear more often than not?
The obvious one, or the elephant in the room, is obviously COVID, and what impact that has had. I think the biggest challenge has been that migration from a in the office at your desk type workspace to enabling and supporting people to work from home or in a different configuration of office landscape, depending on the business that it is that we're seeing. And certainly from a government perspective, we've seen customers that they want to be seen as kind of highlighting, demonstrating and implementing government guidance. So if you look at kind of when COVID kicked off, it was very much a case of only work where necessary. So I've been speaking with central and local government bodies that want and need to implement remote working to be seen and to be able to kind of bestow and highlight that kind of government messaging from a central kind of keep people safe perspective. That over time has kind of evolved in what we're seeing as being the new normal, which is that remote working. And I think there was that initial phase and spike of let's get people working from home, and that was kind of clearly tactical, but it's now kind of molding into more of a strategic view and kind of a new normal, and then what will be kind of the directive for the foreseeable. So now it's a case of let's build resilience, let's improve service, let's kind of improve the infrastructure that supports that kind of out to in way of working, and ensure that remote working is absolutely something that kind of will be kind of deliverable, but also robust, because I think some people have kind of delivered it, and then there's been challenges at a management level around the level of performance that they've seen within that. I think on top of that, we're seeing particular use cases that will need to adapt. And so if you look in the health space, they're looking at how they drive flexibility and how they can enable people to work from home when needed, but also be able to connect devices into corporate networks when they come on, with devices that haven't necessarily gone through the traditional means of deployment. And then there's also, how do we support particular lines of business with frustrations? And what we are seeing is a lot of kind of VDI environments have gone from, I don't know, 20% to 80% of the workforce working, and so there's been an impact on service levels there. So people are having to kind of very quickly backfill and bolster that environment to ensure that lines of business that need to have access to kind of certain line of business tooling that are presented virtually or otherwise are able to kind of do that without an impact on performance. And then one of the biggest things kind of to finish is really that management overhead, and it's how are they ultimately doing more with the same but what will feel like less, because they've gone from deploying devices to a fixed number of locations with a fixed number of configurations from a kind of network infrastructure perspective, to now being able to ensure that they can deploy, repair, replace devices that are going to work on corporate networks, but personal networks, open network, kind of Costa Coffee type networks, and all of that type of thing. So there's really a focus on all of that, being able to ensure that they can deliver in a controlled and secure manner, but without also then kind of hugely hitting their management from a setup perspective. But then there's the associated cost from what that looks like to manage in life, because it's not as easy as being able to walk around the corner or up a floor to IT now. It's a case of having to kind of call in remotely, get hold of the people wherever they're sat, and then kind of fix or have new devices or services presented to them.
Yeah, and the conversations that we're having across the public sector, whether it's in the sort of technology space or skills and development and people management, all sort of echo a similar thing, which is initially everybody was in a sort of continuity and survival mode, so the sort of short-term fixes were the priority, and we kind of got through that phase, and then it became more about, okay, we now have to embed sort of operational performance, we now have to still work out the ways of innovating, improving, and doing those things that organizations still need to do rather than sort of slowly eroding them. And I'm interested in how now we might call it sort of longer term view is emerging, the sort of security piece is playing out. As you mentioned just before, people are on all kinds of different networks. They're having to find out different ways of upgrading, updating, whether that's software, hardware, whatever it might be. What's your view on how security is being impacted and what's needed in order for organizations to overcome that? Now we're into the longer term view.
Yeah, I think to take the wider security piece first, kind of even just outside of work, I think COVID at the very beginning highlighted some really good aspects of society in general, but then I think ever more so what we are sadly seeing is a real proliferation of malicious actors. Now that's from a personal all the way through to corporate perspective, whether that's a kind of a real uptick in terms of sophistication of phishing activity, all the way through to kind of ransomware and other really kind of malicious and nefarious means of kind of attacking organizations. So I think security over the past, certainly the last year, maybe two, has really ramped up the order of kind of importance. But with COVID and, like you say, those different environments that they're delivering it to, it's really, really important and will continue to be. I think cost has always been king, but I think security is certainly fighting for that throne at the moment, because organizations are now going outside of their traditional environments in terms of how they deliver and secure. And I would say that security is probably the aspect of our proposition, Chrome Enterprise, of which we're most comfortable. And it's a conversation that we like to kind of address head on, because we've built Chrome in a different way architecturally from the device through to the management aspect of it. And it's, in terms of how we're advising government, I don't think we would don't think we'd be so bold as to advise government, but we certainly like to have a kind of frank discussion with them. We've got kind of NCSC guidance from a central government kind of tick, if you will, credibility perspective, but then it's looking at addressing perceptions, because I think a lot of people potentially have a view on Google and some of the tools and services, and believe them to not be more secure, and a lot of that stems from our kind of immaturity or youth within the enterprise space. But those perceptions, by and large, are kind of misplaced, I would say. And it's really a case of us looking to work with kind of organizations to show how and why we've built it, and how and where Chrome plugs into an existing infrastructure. I think the key thing to note is you don't need to go Google to go Chrome necessarily. We'd love you, obviously, to go Google Cloud Platform and Google Workspace and all that type of thing, but we're also grown-ups and recognise that pretty much every customer within the government space is a Microsoft shop, which is great. I would then say that within that environment, they can improve on the security of their endpoint and their kind of end user estate by going Chrome Enterprise and having devices that are more secure.
And the session that you're going to be taking part with at the conference is around just that, around securing remote workers.
Yeah.
Feedback you're getting from the public sector, I think you have a good perspective on it from your side. What are they saying to you in terms of their concerns right now? Is it escalating, or is it sort of a bit of a burning platform for them that they really need to sort out rapidly? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I guess that in terms of burning platforms, I think that depends on who you're speaking to. Some customers will have, organisations will have kind of sweat assets to the point that they are now actually on a burning platform, to which they need to kind of make amends and address it relatively quickly. I think more broadly, we are seeing customers want and need to kind of not necessarily accelerate, but certainly ensure that their security posture is as it needs to be, and that has been kind of highlighted by this remote work piece, because I think a lot of customers have unease around what it potentially looks like if people aren't sat within their traditional environment. I know if you call up one of the banks, for example, they will kind of make you aware that the contact center agent that you're going to speak to is quite possibly working from home, but security kind of is in place. And if you look at local government, they will be wanting or needing to provide and maintain the services that they're providing to their constituents, but while someone's working from home. So they then obviously need to ensure that the devices and the services that they're providing to their end users are done so to a level that ensures that us as the kind of people in their constituency are happy with the security level, and then obviously central government kind of frameworks and levels of security that they kind of need to work to are ticking the box on that front as well.
Yeah, I mean,
ultimately,
I was just going to say that the delivery of some of these services, particularly at sort of local level, they're highly sensitive. They're dealing with some vulnerable people. People are still kind of out in the field and so on. That's what we're hearing, and therefore the complexity goes beyond sort of rethinking a conventional desk-based environment, but also that kind of mobile devices, storage of data, accessing data when thinking about sort of social services and so on, where they're visiting vulnerable people. It's a hugely complex thing, and I think it's interesting because the feedback we're getting in conversations from all kinds of different parts of the country is that they have to be on top of this, and therefore that's why I think it's such an important session that we're going to be covering off at the event, because any organisation is going to be having to tackle this challenge to some degree, and so it's absolutely vital they get on top of it. For the event itself, I mean, obviously we're going to have public sector leaders from all over the UK and indeed some, European perspectives as well. What are you interested in hearing from them and learning from them? Because, it's a good opportunity to have conversations and sort of have that kind of two-way feedback. Is there anything you're kind of keen to understand in terms of the conversation?
Yeah, I think, I mean, we've worked, I personally and as a team, we've worked into central and local government across Europe and indeed the US, with that being where we've come from. But with regards to this event, kind of being crass, if you will, what makes them tick? Because each organisation is different, whether it's local or central government, whether it's NHS trust or associated organisations, or whether it's kind of, to your point, it's around end users within a provision of service. So if it's a charity or a council that is giving devices or providing services to those most vulnerable within the kind of geography that they look after, it's what kind of, I hate the phrase, but what keeps them up at night? What is stressing them out, and how can we help them? What do we as Google need to learn to be given a seat at the table? What do we need to do, or what do we need to kind of appease in their mind, to make them kind of acknowledge and kind of think about Chrome as a viable product within their organisation? And then also, what do we, without being arrogant, what do we need to educate them on? What are they missing, or what are the preconceptions around what Chrome Enterprise is? Do they know about it? Because quite a lot of events historically, if I've gone to an event and I ask someone, ask an audience if they know about Chrome, every hand will go up. If you say who knows about Chrome and it's not Chrome browser, most of those hands will go down. So what do we as an organisation need to do to kind of educate and articulate our message within that space? So the ability to kind of engage with leaders from across all of those environments would be really useful for me personally and as an organisation.
Absolutely. And in the spirit of sort of providing useful insights and value, there's an element of the podcast we like to do where our guests kind of share some, maybe it's resources or sort of learning resources that they've come across, whether it's books or podcasts or TED Talks, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Are there any you would sort of recommend to our audience as we build this virtual library of interesting stuff, as it were? What would you recommend people have a look at?
Yeah, I guess a couple of, maybe random, maybe not, depending on who the audience is, but Freakonomics, from the podcast front in particular, Freakonomics, I think they did a couple of books years back around everything really. I think way back when it was an alternative look at the financial impact of technology and the like, but now they cover everything from interviews through to kind of wellness and that type of thing. Motley Fool is one that I kind of dip into and out of as well, and while it is kind of generally investment based, it does at least give you a decent pulse of kind of what's up and what's down from a trend perspective, including technology, which can be quite useful for what might be of interest to kind of leaders across the board. And then things like Business Leader, that it does C-suite interviews essentially. That's always interesting, I think, to kind of hear leaders' views on what they've done within their organisation, what's done well, what's not done so well. And then just, I guess, on a personal level, there's the Mindset Mentor, which kind of gives you a view on maintaining happy and all that kind of thing within a professional kind of space, tips and tricks on how to get more from yourself and in turn from the business.
Yeah, good stuff. That's a nice little package together, helping you kind of keep abreast of personal, social, technological developments, see what's coming down the line and how it might affect you. So yeah, we'll put all those in the show notes so that the viewers and listeners can check those out. But that's a great set of recommendations. Thank you for that. And I know we've got a few minutes left, and before we go, there's something we'd like to do at the end where what we've noticed is that some of the big concepts that we're tackling in the different streams at the conference they're kind of big headline topics, but actually what we found is that they mean different things to different people, and people's perceptions and interpretations of them can vary, and it's interesting to sort of see where the joins are in some of those kind of mindsets and ways people see them. So it's kind of quick fire round. I want to throw some of these topics at you, and
Okay.
interested in your sort of first, your kind of gut reaction to what they mean to you. Couple of lines will do it. Doesn't have to be sort of chapter and verse unless you so feel.
Yeah.
But if you're ready, I'll ping some of these at you, and we'll see what your take is. So, first one up is transformation.
Transformation is, I think, for me, is one of those that varies hugely depending on who you're speaking to, and I think it's one of those that also appears on kind of video call bingo, because it's sometimes scoffed at, I think. But for me, fundamentally, it's something that brings about fundamental change in tools and services offered, and allows you to drive real kind of improvement or efficiency within whatever that field of transformation is that you're looking to deliver.
Great stuff. Service excellence.
That would, for me, be delivering something that you're proud of, whether that's internally or externally. It allows you to differentiate versus what you versus a competitor have, and it allows you to either win or retain, and that can be, again, internally or externally. But if it's providing a service to a customer, whether that's internal or external, I think it's something that really allows you to gain and secure mind space.
Good stuff. And people and teams.
They're probably the most important thing for me. I think you need to keep them happy. You need to keep them engaged. If you're looking at a transformation process, I think it's fundamental to ensure that the teams that you're using to build something are kind of clearly briefed, incentivized, and kind of ready for what you're looking to do. But also the teams and people that are going to be impacted, I think they need to be kind of brought along for whatever it is that you're looking to kind of implement. I think certainly from our perspective, if we are working with a net new customer, sorry to drop back to my product, but if you're looking at someone who's bringing Chrome Enterprise into an organization, we see change management as being one of the key aspects to what we're doing when actually delivering. Because if we can proactively communicate, train, kind of build advocacy within the people that are going to be kind of receiving, impacted, however you want to look at it from a service perspective, then if you can do that kind of ahead of time proactively, you generally see much better adoption and kind of less kind of resistance to change.
Great stuff. It's great to hear somebody from a huge tech company with that emphasis on the people aspect, because, you know, as you said, that's where the implementation has to live and breathe. So yeah, it's great to hear that. Couple more. So we have inclusion.
Inclusion is ever more important, right? I think we have to, as a person, as a team, as an organisation, we need to step back and take a look at our values and ensure that with anything that we're doing, that we remove barriers, hostility, stigma, whatever it might be. I think fundamentally we need to build for all, build for everyone, and ensure that tools, services, products, process are inclusive of everyone. I think historically it was just a case of let's build it and get it done without taking a wider kind of perspective and seeing the impact that a tool or service could have had. I think inclusion is really important to ensure that we take away any potential kind of negative impact or hostility to a tool, service, or just general engagement that we're looking to have.
And last couple, so government data.
vast. I think would probably be the simplest answer there. I think government data it's hugely important. I think it sits within transformation, within digitisation, and kind of all the pillars that are kind of buzzwords across government at the moment. But it's hugely important to ensure that the data that we currently have and have had over decades comes with us into moving forward, and ensuring that coupled with what the data that we will have in time is built and implemented in a secure manner that is accessible, right? Go back to our mission statement, make it instantly accessible and all that type of thing. Government data is so important for the kind of safe and efficient running of a country, and then down to local level, that we need to make sure that it is there, but also accessible and deliverable when required.
And last one, and sort of related topic, GovTech.
Government tech, I think if you look at GovTech, it's sometimes derided, but it's actually a very rapidly evolving space. I think it can apply to emerging technologies, whether that's artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, advanced data, whatever it is. Kind of pick some terminology across that space, and GovTech fits into one or all, depending on the project that you're looking at. And it is obviously changing on a daily basis, GovTech, but even I think you can boil it down to a much simpler level, and it's actually the implementation of any technology, right, that with which you deliver services into government and kind of the space that we serve.
Great stuff. Well, thanks for those. That's some really interesting perspectives, and obviously you with this sort of background in a tech company, it's great to hear how you see them and that focus on kind of end results and their impact in people's lives as much as the tech themselves. So really grateful for you for sharing those. I think it's probably time we let you go, and we've obviously touched on some of the key topics we're going to be talking about at your session when we come to the event. But it's great to have started to explore and understand the environment that government, both local and central, are wrestling with right now, and how you as an organisation can help them and share your perspectives and learnings. So we're grateful for you for taking time to chat to us today, and
thank you for having me.
That's absolute pleasure on our side as well, and we're looking forward to hosting you and the session on remote working when we get to the event in November.
Look forward to it.
Thanks, Matt.
See you then. Thank you.
Thanks again, Matt, for joining us for the conversation. As I mentioned at the beginning, Matt's taking part in one of the most interesting and pertinent sessions that we're holding in the event. Out of office, making a success of remote working. It's a challenge everybody's facing right now, so it's great to explore it with different perspectives, from technology through to behaviour. As well as Matt joining us on the panel, we have John Van Wetter, who's from the Belgian development agency Enable. And we also have Maria Farris, who's from Essex County Council, an organisation that's made great strides in creating blended hybrid working models that allow their staff to work safely at home and securely. The session runs on the 19th of November at 3 p.m. and as part of the full 3-day event, it's free to register. Just follow the link in the show notes below and join hundreds of your colleagues from up and down the UK for 3 days of case studies and learning. That's about it for me from now for this episode, and we'll be back soon with another episode of the GovX Show. Bye-bye.